Linux is no longer the underdog it once was, and Microsoft is no longer the untouchable giant. People assumed it would always be. And if you think that sounds dramatic, then the rumors around Windows 12 in 2025 are about to change your perspective completely. Because for the first time in decades, the conversation is not just about what Microsoft is building next, but whether Linux has already quietly built something better, and more importantly, something users actually want. Now imagine this for a second, a world where your operating system is not tracking you, not forcing updates at the worst possible time, not locking features behind hardware requirements, and not deciding how you should use your own machine. That world already exists, and it is powered by Linux, while Microsoft is still trying to reinvent Windows again with Windows 12. The rumors around Windows 12 are everywhere. Some say it will be more cloud-dependent. Some say it will push AI integration deeper than ever. Some claim it will introduce a subscription-based model for core features, and others believe it will completely redesign the user interface again. But here is the problem. Every major Windows update in recent years promised something revolutionary and ended up frustrating users. Instead, Windows 11 already showed us the direction Microsoft is heading: tighter hardware control, more integration with online services, and a growing dependence on Microsoft accounts and cloud infrastructure. And if Windows 12 continues this trend, then it may not be an upgrade. It might actually push more users away than ever before. While all of this is happening, Linux distributions have been evolving at a pace that most people are not even aware of. And this is not the Linux from 10 years ago that required hours of terminal commands just to get basic things working. This is modern Linux, where you can install a full system in minutes, where updates do not break your workflow, and where you have complete control over every aspect of your system. Distros, like Ubuntu, Fedora, Arch, and Linux Mint, are no longer niche tools for developers. They are becoming serious alternatives for everyday users and even businesses. One of the biggest differences between Linux and Microsoft's approach is control with Windows. You are always negotiating with the system. You want to delay an update, but the system insists you want privacy. But the system collects data. You want simplicity. But the system adds layers of features you never asked for. Linux flips this entirely. You decide when to update. You decide what data leaves your system. You decide how your desktop looks and behaves. And that level of control is becoming more valuable in 2025 than raw performance or flashy features. Now let's talk about performance, because this is where things get really interesting. Windows 12 is rumored to rely heavily on AI-driven features and background services, which means more processes running constantly, more system resources being used, and potentially more battery drain on laptops. Linux, on the other hand, is known for being lightweight, efficient, and fast. Even on older hardware, you can take a machine that struggles with Windows 11, install a Linux distro, and suddenly it feels like a brand new computer. This is not just optimization. This is a completely different philosophy of how software should interact with hardware. And then there is the issue of hardware requirements, something that Microsoft has been tightening with every release. Windows 11 already excluded millions of perfectly capable machines because of TPM and CPU restrictions. And if Windows 12 raises the bar even higher, then a huge number of users will be left behind, forced to either upgrade their hardware or look for alternatives. And this is exactly where Linux wins, because Linux does not abandon your hardware, it extends its life. It gives you the freedom to keep using what you already own without artificial limitations. Privacy is another area where the gap between Linux and Microsoft keeps growing wider. Windows systems have long been criticized for telemetry data collection. And while Microsoft claims this data is used to improve the user experience, many users are not comfortable with how much information is being gathered. Linux distributions, in contrast, are typically open source, which means you can actually see what the system is doing. There are no hidden processes sending unknown data to remote servers, and this transparency builds trust, something that is becoming increasingly important in a world where digital privacy is constantly under threat. But the real game changer in 2025 is not just performance or privacy, it is ecosystem flexibility. Microsoft has been pushing users deeper into its ecosystem, integrating Windows with services like OneDrive, Teams, and its AI tools. And while this can be convenient, it also creates dependency. Linux does the opposite. It gives you choice. You can use any cloud provider, any software, any workflow. You are not locked into a single company's vision of how computing should work. And for many users, especially professionals and creators, this flexibility is a huge advantage. Now here is where things get even more interesting, because gaming used to be the one area where Windows had a clear, unbeatable advantage, but that is no longer the case. Thanks to technologies like Proton and improvements in graphics, drivers, Linux gaming has reached a point where a large number of popular games run smoothly without needing Windows at all. Platforms like Steam have invested heavily in making Linux gaming viable, and the rise of handheld devices running Linux-based systems has pushed this even further. If Windows 12 fails to deliver something truly groundbreaking for gamers, this could be another area where Linux starts to take the lead. And then there is development and productivity, which is where Linux has always been strong but is now becoming dominant. Many developers prefer Linux because of its flexibility, powerful command line tools, and compatibility with open source technologies. And as more companies adopt cloud-native workflows and containerization, Linux becomes even more relevant because it is the foundation of most servers and cloud platforms. This means that using Linux on your desktop creates a seamless experience between development and deployment, something Windows is still trying to catch up with. But let's not pretend Linux is perfect, because it is not. There are still challenges. Software compatibility can sometimes be an issue, especially with certain proprietary applications. And while things have improved dramatically, there can still be a learning curve for new users. However, the gap is closing fast, and for many people the benefits now outweigh the drawbacks, especially when compared to the direction Windows seems to be heading. The biggest question now is not whether Windows 12 will be better than Windows 11, but whether it will be enough to stop the growing shift towards Linux. Because for the first time, this is not just a theoretical discussion. This is a real movement. More users are experimenting with Linux. More content creators are talking about it, and more companies are supporting it. And if Microsoft missteps with Windows 12, it could accelerate this trend even further. And here is something most people are not paying attention to: the rise of AI integration in operating systems. While Microsoft is pushing AI as a core feature in Windows 12, Linux communities are approaching it differently. Instead of forcing AI into every part of the system, they are building tools that users can choose to install and control. This again comes back to philosophy. Do you want an operating system that decides what you need, or one that lets you decide for yourself? When you step back and look at the bigger picture, it becomes clear that this is not just about operating systems anymore. It is about control, privacy, performance, and freedom. Windows 12 represents Microsoft's vision of a connected, cloud-driven, AI-powered future, while Linux represents a decentralized, user-controlled alternative. And in 2025, more people than ever are starting to question which path they want to follow. And this is exactly why the rumors around Windows 12 matter so much, because they are not just about features. They are about direction. If Microsoft doubles down on control and ecosystem lock in, it risks pushing even more users towards Linux. But if it learns from past mistakes and gives users more freedom, it might still hold its ground. The problem is, history suggests Microsoft tends to move in the opposite direction of what power users actually want. So as we move closer to the official reveal of Windows 12, one thing is certain: the competition is no longer one-sided. Linux is not just catching up, it is in many ways already ahead. And whether people realize it or not, the balance of power in the operating system world is starting to shift, and the next few years could completely redefine what it means to use a computer. And if you think this shift is still small or limited to tech enthusiasts, then you might be missing what is actually happening behind the scenes, because the growth of Linux in 2025 is not loud. It is not driven by flashy marketing campaigns or billion-dollar ads. It is quiet, steady, and driven by users who are simply tired of the direction Microsoft has been taking for years. And this kind of growth is often the most dangerous kind, because it builds momentum without needing permission from the mainstream. One of the most important reasons why Linux is gaining ground right now is because of how accessible it has become in the past. Installing Linux felt like a technical challenge, something only developers or enthusiasts would attempt. But now the experience has changed completely. You can download a Linux distro, create a bootable USB, and be running a full system in less time than it takes to install Windows. And in many cases, you do not even need to install it right away. You can test it live, see how it performs, check compatibility, and explore the interface without touching your existing system. This alone removes a huge barrier that used to stop people from even trying Linux. Meanwhile, Microsoft is moving in a direction that feels increasingly restrictive and controlled, with Windows 12 rumors suggesting deeper integration with cloud services and possibly even a modular system where certain features are streamed or updated independently. It sounds innovative on paper, but it also raises serious concerns about reliability and user control. What happens when your operating system depends on an internet connection for core functionality? What happens if services go down or if features are locked behind subscriptions? These are not hypothetical questions anymore. These are real concerns that users are starting to think about. Another key factor that is pushing users toward Linux is the concept of ownership. When you install Windows, you are essentially entering into an agreement with Microsoft where they retain a level of control over your system. Updates can be forced, features can be changed or removed, and telemetry is often enabled by default. Even if you disable some of it, there is always a question of what is still happening in the background. With Linux, ownership is clear. The system is yours. You can modify it, distribute it, and even build your own version. If you have the skills, there is no central authority deciding how your system should behave. And that sense of ownership is incredibly powerful, especially for users who value independence. Now let's dive deeper into the rumored AI features of Windows 12, because this is one of the biggest talking points and also one of the most controversial. Microsoft has been heavily investing in AI, and it is almost certain that Windows 12 will integrate AI at a system level. This could include things like predictive search, automated workflows, voice assistants that go far beyond basic commands, and real-time system optimization based on your usage patterns on the surface. This sounds like a major leap forward, but it also introduces new layers of complexity and potential issues. AI systems require data to function effectively, which means more data collection, more processing, and more reliance on cloud infrastructure. Even if some processing is done locally, the overall system becomes more complicated and potentially less transparent. Linux takes a very different approach. Instead of embedding AI into the core of the operating system, most Linux distributions treat AI as optional tools. You can install AI frameworks, run models locally, and experiment with automation, but nothing is forced on you. This means you can benefit from AI without sacrificing control or privacy, and as local AI models become more powerful, this approach may actually become more practical than relying on cloud-based solutions that require constant connectivity.